Hey friends, welcome back, and it's about Dram time. I'm Sherry.
I'm Corey. This week we're starting our series on Whisky Questions. This week we're covering what are the 6 classic malts.
A little Vanna White for you guys.
It also happens to be the origin story on how we started liking single malts officially.
More of kind of my introduction, true introduction, and when I stopped thinking whiskey was horrible.
So it all started 10 years ago. My mom asked what my dad wanted for Christmas, and he said the 6 classic malts. That was it. Gave her nothing to go on. So she called me, panicking.
The look on her face, like 6 classic malts, like what does that mean?
Right.
But it was kind of the same to us too. Like we didn't really know anything either.
I played it cool. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll figure that out for you. Don't worry. So I started the Googling, looked around, found out that it was these 6 bottles of single malt scotch, and then researched what they were so that when I was looking for them, I knew a little bit about it. Sherry and I started going to stores, checking prices, trying to find the best places to get them. Gave Mom a nice little spreadsheet with the prices and where to find them, and she actually called up their local liquor store, said, my son has done some research on this, here's what he can get them at places, and they actually merged them all into one and gave him a pretty sweet deal on a 6-pack.
Cut forward to Christmas then, and his mom gifted 6 classics, and the funny thing is I don't think his dad expected to get like all 6 at once, maybe like, you know, one for each, I don't know, whatever, birthday or couple or something. So it was kind of fun. We wrapped up our Christmas celebrations, and his dad kind of looked at us, looked at the scotches, looked at us and said, should we try them all? And we're like, okay, yeah, why not?
How do you say no to that?
It's about Dram time.
So that was our...
Sorry, plug.
That was our first ever whiskey flight too.
Yeah, for real. Remind you, like, my only prior experience was just smelling like really cheap, like, whiskey or bourbon. I had tried Glenlivet once, didn't know how to taste it, like, did not have a good experience, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be sophisticated, like, you know, women in whiskey, like, I'm gonna like this. I'm thinking I'm gonna, like, choke it down and just try to, like, look tough or whatnot. But then I was so proud of you. You know, well, I don't know if you researched too much ahead of time about the tastings, but I think last minute, good old friend Google, looked up like what order should you taste them in, and just a quick, like, you know, classic 101 of like how to taste whiskey, because really we had experienced tasting wine and things like that. Do not try to taste your whiskey like you taste wine. So trying that first bit was just, and it was a game changer. So we started
light and moved to smoky.
The Glenkinchie, I think, was the first one, right?
I think so.
And the tasting of that night. Yeah, and learning how to taste it, taking that little sip on the taste of your tongue, kind of moving around, not having enough, like, don't let it hit the back of your mouth or back of your throat right away. But actually tasting it and kind of talking as we taste it, and it was a great experience, and it really opened our eyes up to the different flavors and the different possibilities from that super narrow idea that we had of what scotch was, and it just like blew our minds to the possibilities. It was fun to actually say I enjoyed it, and granted, still, you know, at the beginning of tastings, when you don't have as much of a refined palate, used to picking out flavors, you know, it changes as your taste matures and things, but that first time being able to taste something besides the burn that I had previously, and at least like pick out a caramel or a butterscotch taste or something, like actually get tastes of that, tasting sweetness in whiskey. I don't know, I surprised myself, and it was really fun
It was magical.
To enjoy and drink it with you guys, so.
So that's our origin story and our personal experience with the 6 classic malts. But these are the 6 classics in front of us. actually kind of a marketing campaign formed in 1988 by the Distillers Company and Arthur Bell & Sons. Guinness bought them both. So they kind of picked out some of their single malt distilleries that were unique and in very photo-esque, iconic locations, because they imagined people wanting to someday go visit. So that's part of how they picked these. And they said, these are now our classic malts. And on the back of the box, they actually started listing all the other 5 on there. So every time you bought one of them, you get marketed for the other 5.
Yeah. Brilliant marketing scheme.
Really, it is.
Kind of name it and claim it, I guess. I mean, for real, it's like the definition of it. But what's fun, though, is that having those 6 classics, it gives you a base of something. It's kind of a tour of the island as you go through those different areas. Mostly. They fudged it quite a bit on the regions, because they ignored the official regions and they said, okay, these are classics, and then they drew their own little map and marked them as regions, but they left out Campbellton completely, and they threw in nice multiple ones from the Highlands in there, and Talisker is technically also a Highland, so. But overall, pretty neat.
I'm not going to fault them for it, because it really, I mean, what is that? 30 years later, it still holds up as really definitive classic malts. So good for them. So that's a quick intro to the 6 classics. If you ever hear people talking about the classic malts, or you see the marketing anywhere, you'll have a little better understanding. Yeah. Now we're going to start tasting them in our next series of videos.
Yeah, so stay tuned as we'll start kind of traveling through the 6 classic malts and talk about a little bit more history and background, the distilleries, where they're from, and of course, a good old taste.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Slàinte.
Slàinte.